Hi everyone, this is Dragon GGY. Hope you are enjoying the event, and today I'm bringing the operator Hindsight for the other operator in the banner, 佐乐. 佐乐 is a 6-star solo blade previously known as Musha in the guard archetype. Trait of the archetype can be healed by other units, but will recover 70 HP for himself every time they hit an enemy. They generally come with high max HP and relatively high attack stats, but they also come with the highest DP in guard class at 24 minimum and 26 maximum. Solo blades are designed to duel enemies. They are enmity, do not receive external healing, and they are the typical block 1 attack 1 unit that by default is not meant for lane holding. They can heal themselves by attacking, which is similar to Reapers, but they don't have healing instance limits, whereas Reapers can only heal the same amount of times of their current block count in each attack. Therefore, if there are multi-target or multi-hits in a solo blade kit design, they can recover more HP in one attack. The second signature thing about Solo Blade is Tenacity. Tenacity means gaining certain bonus stats based on the percentage of HP lost. In the early days of the game, all Solo Blade operators use a generic attack speed tenacity talent of plus 100 attack speed maximum at 70% HP loss. This is true for Halager, Utage, and Akafuyu. Players would point out that such generic features should be in the trait instead of taking up a talent, so they kind of change it with modules as well as newer solo blade operators to set the designs apart. For Norcon Alter, instead of going all out on attack speed, some of that is split to defense. And for 佐乐 today, he splits it between attack speed and SP recovery bonus. Basically, attack speed is a way for solo blades to strike an equilibrium in HP so that they can keep their tenacity, which leads to higher DPS, while staying alive by attacking and triggering trait more frequently. Therefore, attack speed tenacity is a key part of the concept, and the reason why all solo blades have one. Now let's take a look at 佐乐 talents, which go hand in hand. Talent 1 gains up to 50 attack speed and SP recovery plus 2 per second tenacity, reaches maximum bonus when losing 70% of max HP. So like we just analyzed, this is the heart of 佐乐 design. He deals more damage and stays alive not only by attack speed, but more importantly, frequent skill uses. If you still remember back when we discussed Viviana, a dueling operator needs something standout and applicable to make them viable, and 佐乐 answer is having as little downtime as possible, and that's very important. If you think about the disadvantages of Viviana and Halager, they have pretty solid stats in skills, but as block 1 attack 1 units, 25 seconds off skill are just still too much, so increasing skill coverage is definitely a right way to optimize that. Talent 2, attacks have a 20%, 23% chance at potential 5 to restore 1 SP. The chance is increased to 70% when below half HP, 75% at potential 5. The talent further reduces the expected skill downtime when 佐乐 is picking up enemies, so even when he can't kill an enemy in one skill usage, he can still utilize such a target to save extra time towards the next skill, and this happens quite a lot in practice. It certainly is less effective against range enemies though. So as you can see, both of 佐乐 talents are SP related, and he certainly lives and dies by his skills. Bad news, his talents don't have anything to increase his DPH, so he's gonna struggle against tougher enemies. Good news, he can struggle forever. As an important touch-up, 佐乐 releases with Solo Blade X. The trait update gives him 25% Sanctuary when below half health. The talent upgrades reduces the HP loss cap from 70% to just 50%, so max tenacity at half health. And the maximum gain from attack speed tenacity is increased by 20, SP recovery by 0.3 per second as well. For base, 25% Sanctuary is cutting incoming damage by 1/4, which is big. It gives 佐乐 much greater survival under half HP, and that's the comfort zone for Solo Blade. The Sanctuary is effective on the skill 3 barrier as well, and this base effect goes hand in hand with the talent upgrades. The upgrades are where Zuole's full potential lie. He can reach max tenacity at 50% HP instead of 30% HP before module, so it's less of a dancing on the tip of the knife and is protected by that sanctuary in base. So at max tenacity, he recovers SP at 3.3 SP per second, attacks at an interval of 0.7 seconds, and when he's constantly picking up enemies with max tenacity, the expected SP recovery is 4.37 SP per second, which is just crazy when everyone is crawling at 1 per second. To really use the character, I'd say level 3 again is a must. Solo blades are massively different with or without modules, and do not keep at module level 1 because the sanctuary will then kick in at half health while you still need to lose more HP for max tenacity, and it creates some anti-synergy using Zuole. For skills, my recommendation is skill 2 and or skill 3 mastery 3, and then skill 1 mastery 3 if you really like. Skill 2 is more for lane holding, as crazy as that sounds for a solo blade, and is better for dealing with all the low to medium threat mobs. 90% of the time you will pick this skill in daily. Skill 3, however, is a skill with a much higher ceiling, facing more threatening enemies. 90% of the time you will pick this skill in harder contents. So skill 2 and skill 3 have very distinct use scenarios. You can pick your priority based on your gameplay preference. Finally, skill 1 is the only AFK skill, and that's basically the only advantage it has over the other two. Skill 1, attack increase to 200% for the next attack. When HP is below 80%, the attack strikes twice. When HP is below 50%, the attack strikes 3 times. This is a 6/4 auto skill with a maximum of 3 charges. Stats are as follow. Basically, minimum cycle DPS is when he's at full health versus maximum cycle DPS where he's below half health. Obviously, this is the only hands-free skill for an otherwise labor-intensive character, but it is very picky towards his enemies. If enemies are too easy, he's gonna do the minimum damage. If enemies are too hard, this skill can't really sustain him well enough even with fast cycles, so you can only pray that the foe he's up against is properly hard to hit that sweet spot, which honestly is not reliable. It has very fast cycling, yes, and can settle into an attack skill pattern under half HP, which we call 1A 1 kill, but because he will frequently enter some short SP lockouts, there will be some losses of the benefits he gets from fast SP recovery. Finally, this is a purely single target skill, which is another disadvantage from the other two skills. Skill 2 immediately loses 50% of current HP and gains a barrier equal to 120% of max HP. Attack plus 170%, block plus 1, and attacks all blocked enemies. The barrier can stack up to 2 times of max HP and depletes at 200 per second after the skill ends. This is a 13/20 12-second manual skill. Since the skill will take him to half health, I would just put the maximum skill DPS here. The skill has 2.5k DPH, 3.5k DPS, and a total damage of around 43k. The fastest expected downtime is calculated when Zuole is at max tenacity and attacking in downtime, so with standard luck, you should be getting this skill back in around 5 seconds. However, there is a known bug in this skill. The sanctuary from module base effect is not effective on the barrier health when it's supposed to. It has not been fixed 6 months after his release in CN. Is it a big deal? Not quite, since most of the time he's doing fine without it, but it's definitely welcomed if we can get fixed. Skill 2 answers a lot of weaknesses that have haunted Solo Blade. First, the lack of means to reduce HP for higher DPS. People thought highly of Wutage as 4-star, and a big reason is her ability to land with just half HP. This is a very crucial feature to make Solo Blade more applicable in easier content because it makes the operator less dependent on what they're up against to perform. That's even more so than Zuole. You can straight up use his skill without anyone around just to prime him for faster subsequent skill cycle. When the fight gets easy, you can make it harder manually, and that's massive. Not to mention that second, Zuole also gets the barrier to back it up. He's gaining effectively more HP with this skill in the form of barrier. If you read closely, he loses HP based on current HP, so he doesn't kill himself, and with each uses, the actual amount of HP he loses becomes less. While on the other hand, he gains barrier based on max HP. As a character with 4.2k HP, he gets 5k barrier for each skill use. That's oftentimes more than enough to sustain him until the next skill. So this skill provides him with solid self-sustain while helping him reach and maintain max tenacity. Also, for one of the most unlikely archetype to lane hold in the game, the skill does provide him with a higher reliability, doing so by switching to block 2, attack 2. So with some timing or help, he could find some performance holding a lane with some 5-second cooldown in between. Overall, for pros and cons, it can actively reduce his own HP for both higher DPS and subsequent fast skill recovery, has never-ending barriers to help him with his survival while not compromising tenacity, and that fast recovery also brings good consistency. For cons, well, it's a labor-intensive skill as you probably have imagined. A good analogy would be Mountain Skill 2 that activates about every 17 seconds and you have to manually press it again to make him block 2 and attack 2 again. Next is DPH. It's certainly not low by any means, but at the same time, 2.5k physical damage is no longer a high number. Dagon, Ray, and in the future Alla, Visadel, Alpianus, they are all way above this number. The key here is that considering this is a short cycle but also short duration skill, not having enough damage means leaking of skill, which of course is less ideal for a skill that is meant to do some lane holding. Skill 3 immediately performs 7 slashes to the front, each dealing 245% of attack as physical damage to up to 3 enemies, with the last strike having a doubled multiplier which means 490%, and stunning the targets for 5 seconds. During skill, or in other words, with these 7 slashes, the HP recovery effect from trait is changed to gaining barriers 3 times of the recovery amount instead, which means 70 times 3, 210 barrier from each successful hit. This is a 10/25 skill that has a 2-second duration we can't just leave out. The stats are as follows. DPH other than the final slash is actually lower than skill 2, so that DPH problem is still present like we analyzed. If Zuo doesn't pick up enemies in downtime, which can happen due to it having a longer range, the fastest downtime is 7.58 seconds. If he does attack, then the skill is expected to come back in around 5.72 seconds. Now let's quickly go over the mechanics. First of all, each slash will seek target independently, so in short, you don't lose damage if a previous slash killed an enemy and you can take down more than just 3 enemies with a single use. Second, despite being an instant skill, it does have a 2-second or 60 frame duration or SP lockout. The overall timeline is shown here. The key info here is that the stun doesn't happen as soon as you may imagine. It comes with the final slash on the 36th frame, which is 1.2 seconds after activation, so you need to be careful when you want to play it close, and start the skill preemptively if you want to interrupt an enemy. For the barrier gain, like we said, each successful hit gives Zuo 210 barrier, so with less targets, he will be gaining less barrier, so less reliable than skill 2. By maximum, he should be able to gain 4,410 barrier by landing 7 slashes on 3 targets. This is a dueling skill with really high ceiling. By short cycle, we're talking about a 25 SP skill with 5.72 to 7.58 second downtime. Don't forget to include 2-second duration, so each cycle is just 7.72 to 9.58 seconds, pretty much in line with all the power strike skills. So for the standard of these kind of skills, 18k damage for each burst for a cycle DPS of around 2000 minimum is massive. For comparison, here are the stats for some notable multi-target power strike skills, and they usually have 1000-ish DPS. Next is the stun. It's a massive addition to buy 佐乐 some more time to get the skill back, extra room of error to reduce the survival pressure between skills. In optimal scenario, it can give 佐乐 stun coverage up to 64.8% with a 5-second stun in a 7.72 second cycle. That's already extremely impressive for a singular operator. With any CC relic, he's able to solo permastall enemies. Last but not least, his survival. Barrier with skill 3 can correctly benefit from the sanctuary, so they become extra durable. It also allows him to gain barrier based on a fixed number instead of the percentage based in skill 2, so that's a plus under max HP debuff scenarios. In one cycle, 佐乐 can have an expected HPS of 355 or 612 or 869 depending on the enemy count. That's completely unaffected by attack debuffs, considering 佐乐 can also stun his target and occasionally take a hit or two to gain tenacity. He can stand up to some of the most dangerous enemies in the game. Pros and cons. To summarize, this skill has one of, if not the best solo capabilities out of all dueling operators. He really can outlive a ton of enemies, facilitated by frequent skill uses. Again, the barrier mechanic is a perfect design for Solo Blade, maintaining both effective HP and max tenacity, and the 5-second stun with super high coverage is full of potential in chaining crowd control. Cons come with pretty interesting reasons as well. First of all, it's extremely labor intensive. Skill 2 is kinda sweaty, but this one is on another level. Imagine using all the power strike skills manually, one button press every 7 to 9 seconds, demanding a lot of attention. Again, just medium DPH, so it can lead to prolonged fights. He obviously is weaker against stun immune enemies. Without the 5-second stun, he can still easily fall during the downtime. Next is the compromise of picking this skill. There's no active means to reduce HP, and despite earning barrier instead of HP with skill, his auto attack off skill still recovers HP for him, which can lead to him slowly building HP back up, while enemies may not be able to penetrate his barrier in time, let alone the actual health, and he will eventually lose the maximum tenacity. The workaround is holding onto the skill until it expires in 15 seconds, or letting enemies hit him for a bit. But at the end of the day, those are just passive solutions. If enemies are just overall too weak to even damage him, this skill straight up wouldn't work. The skill will be on a 25-second cooldown, and he's gonna leak like a fan. So now that we know the performance of this skill, or just Solo Blade overall, depends heavily on the enemy difficulties, so here are some wacky combos to adjust that difficulty. These may or may not be very practical since 佐乐 is supposed to be a lone wolf most of the time. First of all, Warframe. 佐乐 skill 3 doesn't have attack modifiers, only attack scales, which is a big flag for attack buffs. Using Warframe skill 2 on 佐乐 gives him DPH level of Dagon Pressure, boosting the damage by a straight 90%. Also, because Warframe doesn't actually heal 佐乐, skill 2 is just a way to deplete his HP to prime him for max tenacity. Next, we have Stainless skill 3. When using 佐乐 skill 3 to duel just one enemy, obviously he's gaining less barrier due to less hits, and Stainless turrets can fill that up. Hitting the turrets earns him full barrier with each skill, and the turrets can supplement some extra damage. Plus, having 佐乐 behind a turret gives him additional physical damage reduction that stacks with Sanctuary, and this is probably the most powerful survival combo you can have for him on top of what he already has. You can also use Shama there to reduce 佐乐 pressure off skill and increase skill damage by her talent and the attack and defense reduction offered by skill 2. If you want, you can also sacrifice the gain from talent 2 and put a half HP 佐乐 behind a defender to guarantee stable tenacity and make him a stun trigger every 10 seconds or so. Overall, 佐乐 is a next-gen solo blade or a dueler in general that solved or at least optimized a lot of the problems that previous operators suffered from. That's made possible by his fast skill cycles. He has a barrier mechanics that maintains tenacity while providing sustain. You can pick between skill 2 and skill 3 depending on enemy difficulty. Basically, skill 3 when it's hard and skill 2 when it's not hard enough. and as a slight disadvantage, he doesn't have the high DPH that many of the physical damage dealers are packing nowadays, but I guess that's in line with Solo Blade's design because they have a massive attack speed bonus on their own, and Zuole's DPH level probably is the furthest they can push on this archetype. For performance in coming events, he immediately shows his potential by stalling the crazy Seaborn Slapper in CCB Underdawn, so even against debuffs to his own max HP and buffs to enemies' offensiveness, he proved that he can still manage elite enemies in the highest difficulty content in the game. He also has notable performances in self-limiting content like low ops runs, no relic IS clears, etc., and used to hold an exclusive duel record with Ling on H11-4 until Visitor. He's obviously also good with relics, but in that context, he's less competitive with the other popular picks in guard and definitely isn't as easy to use as many others. So, in conclusion, Zuole is a 6-star solo blade that, personally speaking, redefined what a dueling-oriented unit can do in 2024. He's able to solo stages with massive enemy count. He's able to go toe-to-toe with some of the toughest enemies in the game. At the end of the day, Archetype is a game of skills, and Zuole's design definitely took note of that. The barrier mechanic makes him less vulnerable, and for most players, you don't need to worry as much about if his enemies are too weak to enable his full potential, or they are too tough to make the equilibrium possible. For daily, I give him a 4. He's definitely the most well-rounded operator ever designed for dueling. Staying alive is already a massive win, and his skill 2 definitely brings more relevance to daily. You can also hella drop him with no problem. However, his potential is still somewhat dependent on enemy composition and difficulty. You still can't sign him up as a reliable lane holder. He's labor intensive, almost the exact opposite of the idea of AFK. He's the most expensive archetype in guards, which in daily content isn't very appealing compared to executors or even dreadnoughts. And finally, it's just becoming more and more of a thing that operators meant for dueling as a whole has seen less and less demand as safety belts. Players have increasing amount of big range multi-target damage skills that they can just relay and use one by one to call it a day. That's overall the reason why the bar has been rising for daily. For Advanced, I have him at 6. Even at the highest difficulties, he represents the upper ceiling of what a single operator can do, mostly in staying alive. The fixed healing and barrier gain, attack speed, and SP tenacity are all resilience towards various debuffs you can find in harder content. But then, he doesn't have a high DPH, especially under attack debuffs, so he's mostly reserved for crowd control and stalling. In buff game modes like IS, his advantages will be less impactful, thus making him less competitive than other damage dealers in a team environment, given that you are not playing with self-constraints. For pulling advices, I think a good summary would be if you want challenges and unique gameplay, he's probably one of the most thrilling character to use in the game. But if you want it easy, want it efficient and simple, he's probably not for you. Gameplay. One of the most justified dueling operators with a kit design that I really like and appreciate. If you want challenges, timing the skills, dancing on the tip of the sword, I guarantee you will have fun with him. But for players who love AFK or just overall want damage dealers that are applicable in most content, he's likely the last operator you need. For schedule and meta, other than the low ops runs and no relic clears, his performance is actually very consistent for a block 1 unit designed to stay on the field. Not to throw shade on Viviana, but I would really love it if she had any of the features that Zuole is rocking with. But that's all I can say. We have the R6 Collab 2.0 next month, we have more versatile damage dealers coming up in the next limited event, and after that, I'm really observing a declining demand for these dueling operators. I believe most players won't really go for things like no relic runs, so again, you can consider whether you want to pull, or if you pulled, if you will prioritize building him. To wrap it up, here's the rating previews for all upcoming operators. Again, before their actual hindsight videos, these ratings are subject to changes based on current meta and how they are doing since their release. If you are anxious about the upcoming banners, well, I don't know if this would be a good news, but the latest summer event operators or the soon-to-be 5th anniversary banner for you guys are not that dramatic, at least in terms of power, to perhaps give you guys a break. But again, the operators on this whole page don't have a module for them yet, so there are still odds we do not know of, and stay tuned for future updates. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.